Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. It's Tuesday, June 23rd, 2026, episode 528, and we're going to talk about black markets and prisons. And I think I might have talked about this before, at least the prisons part of it, but it must have been a passing remark in another episode. So I thought I would stick it in the title this time around, so that I know I talked about it before. Okay, but I have talked about black markets in the past in a couple of episodes, primarily in episode 387. I'm just going to summarize a lot of what I said there on the topic of black markets when I get to it. Okay, so when I was younger, and I would hear about trade deals or regulations, safety regulations. I always thought it was for our benefit, for people like me, uh, naive people, people who don't know better and who need to be protected. The government is going to save the day, protect us from bad deals, and make sure everything is safe for us. But then I got older and I realized that these trade deals and regulations are not for us. We are not the primary beneficiaries of this type of governmental behavior. And the beneficiaries, the people who benefit the most, of course, are special interest groups. I've talked about um, drug-related regulations are there to protect pharmaceutical companies, and their bottom line. So even drugs which would be beneficial to us, research which would be tremendously beneficial to us, are not funded. They're not permitted because what's more important than our health and safety and even the quality of the average person's life is the bottom line of pharmaceutical companies. And so, if this is the case, if this is the true purpose and agenda behind trade deals and regulations, then we don't need the government for that. Their activity goes contrary to the interests of the everyday person. So, what inspired me to do this episode today is a story that I first heard through Vince Lanci in his daily free podcast, and that there was a gold smuggling ring broken up in Japan. So I looked it up. NHK World Japan had a story called Mannequin Gold Smugglers to Face Japan's Long Arm of the Law. But some AI, Google AI thing also generated a summary of what happened, and you can check that out. But I'm sure other people are going to talk about it because those so-called mannequins were actually sex dolls, right? So the gold was being smuggled inside of the skeletal structure of these sex dolls, just so that you don't get carried away there. But it was nearly 50 kilograms of gold, which turns into $6.65 million worth of gold at today's market price. Now, one might ask, why would you do that? Why would you try to smuggle something like gold into a country and not drugs, right? Well, it's because they want to avoid $620,000 in taxes. So when you import gold into Japan, you have to pay about a 10% tax, which is a lot. And so if you can get it in by avoiding the taxes, then you make that much more money. So clearly, someone narked on them, someone gave law enforcement a tip, because how else are you going to be able to find gold in the skeletal structure, the steel tubes of the doll? You're not going to be looking there. And I don't think that an X-ray machine would be able to pick it out or distinguish between the steel and the gold. I don't think they have that tech to do that. So someone who was on the inside gave them up, maybe a competitor, right? Someone who was smuggling gold in, I don't know, action figures as opposed to sex dolls. I don't know. But obviously, competition or someone who was upset, maybe it was a spouse, you know, told law enforcement, and that's how they got caught. That's usually how people like that would get caught. But that's who they caught. So, what I'm also implying at the same time by talking about competitors is that lots of people are smuggling things like gold into Japan. And so that led me to remind us all and remember the beauty of black markets. You can call them gray markets, shadow markets, or the untaxed market, or the actual free market. I don't know. There are many different names, ways you can, talk about black markets. And I did do an episode 387, and I talked about black markets, but I'm just going to um, sort of briefly go over some of the more interesting points that I raised in that episode. The article that I quoted heavily in that particular episode was by Anthony Gregory, who wrote about, I don't even have the title of that article, but and I tried to Google it, even have the date. It was originally published in November 23rd, 2009. One might think that it's dated, that it's kind of long a time ago kind of thing. But no, the argument is still relevant for today, except probably a lot worse. But anyway, so a couple of highlights from that article. Um, the shadow market or the black market here in the United States is actually huge. In other countries, Greece, at the time, it was 25% of the economy. Mozambique, an African country, is 40%. And in the United States, it's about 8%. That was in 2009, which at the time amounted to $1 trillion, um, which is a sizable amount. And in fact, bigger than some of the economies of other countries in the world. A lot of countries wouldn't survive if not for the gray and black markets. And this is because people need that stuff, right? People will smuggle things that people need. That's how they know that someone is going to buy it. And there's a market for it. They can make a profit. So some countries, because they regulate certain products as either illegal or needs to be heavily regulated, that a lot of people wouldn't be able to have access to it. And they need it desperately. Sometimes it's medicine, sometimes it's a piece of equipment. In this case, it's money. So the Soviet Union, for example, needed to have a thriving black market to survive because the economy by itself could not provide everything that was needed to the average person. And it's not even that the black market was able to meet this demand because there was just such a huge lack. But without the black market, things would have been much, much worse. At the time in 2009, this is 2009, if you remember, is soon after the 2008 housing crisis. So a lot of people are probably in dire straits. They're desperate. And so at the time, the black market was expanding and probably is expanding as we speak. Now, what's interesting is that and what Mr. Gregory points it out here, Anthony Gregory, is that is able to exist without state regulation, right? So the black market continues to function. People continue to use the black market without the state. In fact, even though the state or the government is trying to shut it down, it's functioning 99% of the time safely and effectively. So you don't need the government, right? So a lot of people who like to say, without the government, you wouldn't be able to buy and sell safely. No, not true. And I've talked about it before, but the regulatory system is built into the fact that you don't want all your customers dying. If all your customers always die after a one-time purchase, then you don't have any more customers. And anyone who survives will warn everyone else to stay away from you. So your business dies. So it's actually in the interest of the business to make sure that their products are safe, their products are effective. Okay. Now, here's the thing. Once the government takes over that safety regulatory aspect of trade, then sellers don't need to worry about it any longer, right? It's not their responsibility. It's someone else's responsibility. So why should I pay extra to make sure that my stuff is safe? Not going to do it. And so as long as you have the seal of approval, the FDA safety seal and this or that, then you're going to just assume that it's safe. And then when people start dying or things start happening, or it's not your fault, you have no legal liability, right? It's on the government, and no one can sue the government. And so you just have to suffer in silence. Now, in a free market, there, of course, wouldn't be any black markets because everything would be perfectly legal. Um, So even though the government tries to shut down the black market, they can't. Uh, People's need is so great that no matter how much the penalty and punishment there is, people are still going to engage in that kind of activity. So you have to even wonder how much better it would be if there was no ICE or DEA or FBI or any of these other government organizations. And if you think about it too, the best smugglers and the best facilitators of the black market are government entities themselves. Iran Contra affair, after all, Fast and Furious, to harebrained government schemes that I've talked about in the past. Right. And so the government does the very things that we are not allowed to do. They have, of course, good reasons for doing it, but of course, they are all criminal and illegal. So without all of this hypocrisy, without all of this interference from the government, how much better would life be? Um, let's see. So one might also think that the reason why the state wants to shut down the black market is because of all of the lost tax revenue. I just even said in the gold smuggling story at the top of the episode that they were looking at $620,000 in taxes, lost revenue. And that's what they want. They want money. Less money for you, more money for them. Not even like they need to tax us because they just print money anyway. And the printing of money or the increasing money units in society um, is taxation in the first place, right? It is taxation. So why do they have to tax us more? It's just to keep us in control, I've heard many people say. Now, there is no, I'm not trying to say that the black market is perfect. Obviously, there's fraud, there's criminal murder, and etc. But it happens anyway, right? Even with the government regulating things, it happens anyway. And when government does it, it's legal, right? So you accidentally kill someone, oh, it's a crime, we got to go to trial. But when the government like so-called quote unquote accidentally kills schoolgirls in Iran, oh, okay, sorry. They don't even say sorry. They don't even apologize. They say, well, this is war. So they just brush it off. So it's kind of crazy. Um, yeah. And you just look all around society, everything, Epstein, come on. There is a tremendous amount of criminal behavior that is sanctioned and not pursued, not prosecuted. No one ever gets punished because it's done by the government. All right. So, but what we do know is that the black market is like 99% peaceful. There's not a lot of violence going on there. Because why would you do a crime against the person who's providing a very valuable service to you? Why would you, you know, do harm to the very people you are selling to, your customers? And it just doesn't make any sense. And you kind of have to get the Hollywood imagery out of your mind. that a lot of this is to promote and justify government activity as opposed to revealing the interests and the needs of people who are suffering in this country. And so that was what I said in that previous episode. But you can kind of see why, uh, and some people would argue that this war and all of this other stuff that's going on is meant to create a financial crisis in the country so that the government can introduce CBDCs, central bank digital currency. That way, all of our buying and spending is tracked. Make sure that there is absolutely no way out. The government gets to take control of everything, and we're just not free anymore. And so one can get pretty depressed about that, which is why we have to talk about prisons. A prison is the kind of world the government wants and desires. They fantasize about it. You have tightly controlled borders. You have guards on the borders, nothing in or out unless they say so. You got the prison population. Their behavior is controlled. Everything that they can have, eat, wear, their sleeping schedule, everything strictly controlled by them. I mean, it's a perfect world for a statist or an authoritarian. Everyone is watched, and you are denied a normal life. In fact, that is normal. That's your normal life. The prison life, that's what's normal. And that's what the government wants us to slowly become a happy prison population. So if you and I tried to find the article, but because I had my computer, I had to switch computers, and I haven't even after 3 years, I haven't transferred all of my data from old hard drives, and so I got to do that this summer. But I had an article that talked about how a prison, one would think, is locktight, airtight. Nothing can go in and out of these prisons, especially maximum security prisons. But this article that I used to use in class, they talked about inmates, prisoners having cell phones, having breakfast sandwiches from McDonald's made earlier that day, drugs, all kinds of things. Uh, the comforts of home without the comforts of home. And the way that they are able to have all of these amenities is because the guards, the very people who are supposed to watch the borders, so-called, who are supposed to surveil and look for all of these contraband items, they are the actual facilitators. They are the ones who are allowing or bringing the stuff in. They're the weak link, the human component. And before you start jumping all over guards, um, you have to imagine, well, the money incentive, the bribe incentive is pretty strong. If guards aren't paid well, then sure, bribes are going to be, monetary incentives, shall we say, are going to be pretty attractive. But also think about it. If a prisoner, if an inmate is part of a gang and they still have active gang members on the outside of the prison, and they find out who the guard is, where they live, well, now your family can be threatened. And so guards are pretty vulnerable in that way, at least I would imagine. So if that's true for prisons, then think about border police, DEA agents, politicians themselves, all of the loopholes that they know about, have created deliberately so that they can have access to it. They can take advantage of how to get around the very laws that they have created for the rest of us. Just think of Iran-Contra, Fast and Furious, which I mentioned earlier as well. And I'm sure there's a whole host of others. I mean, the Epstein situation, come on, it's rules for thee, not for me kind of situation, right? So people who participate in the black market, shadow market, actual market, uh, environment, you have to pay a premium. You have to pay a little extra. And what is the currency? What is the payment is determined by the situation. So one article I looked up just now, They use stamps. I don't know, stamps, right? Post office stamps. And then back all the movies you see, it's cigarettes, right? So whatever has value for the people in the prison, that's going to be the currency. Now, I might have said this story once a while ago, but when I was in Korea, this was in the 90s, and I started getting this itch for American food. I've been there for 3 years, and I just had to have American food, baked goods from America, cookies from America, pizza from America for crying out loud. And someone told me that you can get fresh bagels from LA from Little America so this neighborhood right next to the 8th Army base in Seoul. And I was like, "What? You could get bagels that were made that morning in LA or some other place uh, in this little village next to the 8th Army base." And I was like, how? And it's smuggling. The people who are flying in the food for the US troops take skim off the top and they sell it in the black market in the neighborhood right next door to the base. Obviously, it's an open secret. I mean, come on. If everyone knows. If I found out about it, then everyone knows. But I thought it was so amazing how the bagels were fresh. I mean, they were bakery fresh, which tells you that if money is the incentive, if profit is incentive, how much more efficient they are. Um, and they also, I found out when I was about to leave Korea that, Korea at the time had put limits on how much money can exchange into dollars because they were trying to protect the Korean currency, and they didn't want, a lot of dollars exiting the country. So there was a black market even in dollars, and they all knew what the exchange rate was. And and I always wondered about that. This is pre-internet days, right? So for them to always get updates on the actual market exchange rate was just so amazing to me. But that is the nature of the black market, is that they are much, much more efficient than their government sponsored opposites, counterparts. So, in summary, because this will be an issue, and one of the things that I always said in all my classes is that what is legal and illegal, that's a wall of a box, right? That's the wall of a lot of people. People say, "Oh, I can't do that. It's illegal." And so people won't venture there, and that's why you're stuck in a box. Um, so the rules that are set up, the rules that we are supposed to abide by, they basically signal what authoritarians don't want you to have so that other special interest groups can benefit. It's not for your safety, it's not for your protection, but rather is for the safety and protection of special interest groups. Now, the state won't hesitate to make an example of some people, right? They'll say, "Oh, we caught this person and that person for smuggling for this and that." But otherwise they don't want you to have it. They don't care if people die as a result of their policies. All they care about is ensuring the benefit and profit of special interest groups, whether it's pharmaceutical companies, the military industrial complex, senators, whatever. And so the comfort that we have, that we all should have, is that the state largely are not very good at what they do. They're grossly inefficient, and that allows us to be able to take advantage of gray areas, places where they are not very good. And moving forward, if the economy does go violently sideways or even collapses, then we're going to need those black markets and shadow markets to get what we need to survive, especially if it comes to it, hopefully never, but food, medicine, these things might only be available through a black or a gray shadow market. And so if that ever happens, if that becomes the reality for us in the future, then don't hesitate to take advantage, because the only reason why the black market exists is for someone else's benefit. Well, that's it for today. I just thought I'd crank out an episode because I gotta go play with my kid. And it was just something that came to mind because of the gold smuggling story this morning. That's it for today. I'll talk to you tomorrow, Lord willing.